All right, let's get into the news.
Did
anyone have flashbacks to the Nixon Watergate hearings today? I didn't because I wasn't born yet, just barely. But maybe you were, and watching the FBI's congressional hearings today might have been just as exciting or more so. Among the items discussed were code as a free speech right, conscription to labor, how the FBI's request would affect people in the U.S. as well as the rest of the world. Do you guys have any favorite quotes from today's hearings? My favorite quote was, "I don't know."
Oh, did you hear that a few times?
Yes, from James Comey. Yes, there was.
I just don't know. Oh, this hearing was pretty fascinating, despite it being a very long C-SPAN traditional. All right, we're going to get a bunch of senators and congressmen basically feeling their way through the strange and often complicated world of encryption. And I was actually impressed just how many folks came in with some of their homework being done. I've seen hearings like this before and in past where, a congressman will come in and have basically require a complete rehashing and ask really crazy inane questions. And while that did happen in this hearing, it happened to a far lesser degree than I expected. There are a lot more educated congressmen and people willing to talk about the actual issue at stake rather than overbloating it.
I couldn't agree more, because we've been talking a lot about how it's like, oh, they just don't understand. The lawmakers don't understand. The FBI doesn't understand. And then it was really a relief to really see everybody asking what I felt were the right questions. Unfortunately, it did not seem like anyone was compromising on either side, really.
Well, of course. I suppose this is day one, so we'll see what happens. Dr. Susan Landau is she's a professional in the security world, and I actually found a lot of what she had to say pretty interesting. She basically said that the FBI is not up enough on infosec. Needs to improve its technical abilities as opposed to asking a company to kind of write their way into it. And also, she brought up the really good point that, it's not just people's phones in their pockets. It's also, that people are using, phones are more and more used as authentication for things that are actually very important, things like power grids and all that kind of stuff, that if the defense is, oh, well, this will never fall into the wrong hands, which is what we keep hearing over and over from, the side of the FBI, that, okay, well, you may feel that way, but you never truly know. And hey, there's a greater risk than just, the phone in somebody's pocket. It could actually affect a lot a people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I was so very glad to see Ms. Landau on this panel. I think, as you said, Jason, she had a whole number of remarkable things to say, with especially in regards to the larger picture of encryption. Not just about two-factor authentication, but how encryption affects our day-to-day, how it affects not only phones, but we're talking about encryption on a wide scale. We're talking about encryption in other devices. And I feel like it's a very different message coming from someone like Ms. Landau, who has the decades of experience in this field, in contrast to either the director of the FBI or Bruce Sewell, who is Apple's legal counsel, because, of course, they're going to be fighting for their respective sides. And I think Ms. Landau truly is fighting on behalf of encryption as a technology. Not, this particular case or not this particular case, but the big picture ramifications of what it means for infosec and what it means for the United States as part of the world powers going forward, whether or not we choose to have encryption in our lives.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what direction this goes. It seemed to me like the majority of the representatives there want it to be figured out, to work out a law, want Congress to kind of be in charge of that. FBI Director James Comey really wants the courts to, wants to go in a completely different direction. So I don't know.
He really does not want that legislation. He doesn't want to go down the legislative route.
He does not.
No, this is not even for the big picture, which I found really interesting about today's hearings was, we've got pretty much the first official time that Comey has acknowledged that this version of the All Writs Act could be used to unlock other phones. And you also have this this horrible, very FUD-inducing quote, which I'm paraphrasing from Engadget's live blog here, where it's like, I worried that it's hard to have nuanced discussions like this in the wake of terrorist disasters, and our Congress members prepared to possibly be blamed for favoring privacy over the idea of national security in the wake of some future attack. And basically, that happens around, I think, 3:27 if you're looking at the live blog. But essentially, he's saying, well, this case is about encryption. A horrible tragedy has already happened, but think about all of the tragedies we could prevent if there wasn't this pesky, horrible encryption thing standing in our way. And unfortunately, that is a powerful argument, but a slippery slope argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because I think you don't find that many times in your life that you're really thinking about the three branches of government, so I think oh yeah, there needs to be a law. Like, we don't want this in the courts. It really reminds you how this works. And it does seem to be working in the way that the government is supposed to be working, which is interesting. I also, I loved that Comey admitted, because, he said it wasn't a mistake that the FBI ordered them to reset the phone. Because that was, they could have had so much information if they hadn't reset the password, the Apple ID password on the phone. And, for a while, Comey said, well, that wasn't a mistake. We meant to do that. And today he admitted, that was a mistake. So,
FBI are people too, okay?
It's better. It's better for them, honestly, from a political standpoint. It's better for them to admit sheer incompetence than it is to admit malicious intent. Because if they pointed it as, oh, this wasn't a mistake, we meant to do that intentionally, that lends credence towards the theory that essentially the FBI was building this case to try and honey trap Apple.
Mm-hmm.